One of the things I wanted to show before I get the dash all finished off is done a few things to change the layout. If you look where the gauges now are for oil, fuel pressure, and exhaust gas temperature, that's where the display used to be for the doors, door opens and all that. I made a new pocket down there. So I left a little bit of a sunglass pocket and then moved that display down, cut it up a little bit so I can still fit it in. Got just a cheap MP3 player in here where the radio used to go. I'll show you that a little bit more later, but that's very light, so it didn't take up any stress on the dash with the weight. And then at the top you got the navigator, which is semi-functional, but it doesn't work as far as accuracy because the fuel injectors are much bigger than stock, so it doesn't really know how much fuel is going in. So one of the things I also wanted to show was on the back of the gauge cluster here, I put some terminal strips because I'm always trying to grab power. And the way it's laid out is I've got ground, lights, accessories, ignition, and battery power. So I can tap into them, and they're color coded so that the connectors are white for lights and blue for ignition and red for the battery. And that way if you ever take a wire off, you have an idea where it goes. Plus I've tried to label everything to tell me what accessory is going where, if it's a switch and so on. So I'm just trying to clean that up, make it a little user friendly so that if somebody has to troubleshoot it down the road, they've got an idea of where everything goes. And ironically, I've got an 88 Daytona wiring harness in here, and since the Daytona has the concealed headlamp module, this one doesn't need it because the Laser's got 4 lights that are always there. So what I did was I stole power and ground and so forth out of here, and actually the ground is fused. So that's kind of neat that the ground terminal in here is actually a fused ground, plus all the other ones. This is actually the circuit that went to the headlamp motors, and I've made that the circuit for my neon headlights that I'm going to use for daytime running lights. I'll show you a little bit more in a minute. So my input for the power will go to that terminal, and then I've got the connection up there set up for the neons. Going down on the bottom, I've had a I had a problem over the years where my fuel pressure bleeds off. If I shut the car off, I lose my fuel pressure. And then when you try to start it, the module, the relay, doesn't stay engaged long enough to give you a full fuel pressure kick. So sometimes it wasn't starting. So what I did was I wired in an auxiliary fuel pump pressure switch that turns on when when the ignition's on, and this will engage the fuel pump for as long as I've got that switch on. And then you turn it off, and the fuel pump still runs on the normal ignition circuit. But if you want to override it, this is the manual override. Just throw it up and you got it. This switch is daytime running light, and the way it works is it's a 3-position switch. So when it's in the center position, it's off. When you push it up, you get the daytime running lights are on constantly. So even though the ignition is off, the lights are on. If you push it down, it's only live when the ignition turns on. That way I've got daytime running lights. I'll show you what that looks like. So these are the halos that I installed, and I can change the color on them to be whatever you want. It's a cell phone app they come with. I'll put a link to in the comments. But I think it's one of those things at the car show I'll leave it blue, but when I'm driving down the road I don't want it blue because that's illegal, and I'll just make them white for daytime running lights. But it's kind of nifty lights. Supposed to be DOT rated. They are bright, but not offensively bright like a lot of lights you run into. So low beams. High beams. I wanted to show also up on the right, this is an AM/FM radio. The switch here I've got is for my power antenna, so it's a slide switch. When you put it up, power antenna will go up automatically, or manually I should say, and if you put it down, it stays down. That way if you turn the radio on, you aren't necessarily running the power antenna up. There are times like car wash or you don't want it up. That's not wired it's not connected at the moment, but these are the switches down in the bottom. There's actually a nice little pocket down here if you've got a manual transmission. There's a little bit of space that allows you to run switches. So if you're looking for a spot for switches, that's a good spot for it. And you can see this module that I made. If you look at the size of the door open module, this is the bare bones. It's right down to the board size of it. And like I say, I got a little sunglass pocket. It's still there. So that's basically the dash layout as far as the wiring. Kind of a mess, but it's getting cleaner. I'm getting rid of some of the garbage I'm no longer using, like the alarm system. There's a lot of wires I cleaned out. So that's it. Forgot to show two more gauges. My boost gauge and my air fuel ratio gauge are on the door pillar. And I've got a Teflon tube coming out of the manifold, 1/8 inch tubing, and that comes up to the boost gauge. And then I found with the air fuel ratio gauge that a problem is a lot of times, especially if you're driving at night, you don't want that flashing light in your face. So what I did was I put an on-off switch with an LED next to it. So if I want it, I can turn it on. If I don't want it, I can turn it off. And that way I know if I'm gonna, or if I want to eliminate it, it's gone. Because it's a real distraction at nighttime having that thing flashing different colors at you. So that's the extent of the aftermarket gauges. The dash is pretty much standard. As far as the layout, my gauges are all analog. I'll get that in a later video. A couple more things I want to show before I'm done. This display, that warning display, show how I've cut it down and made it more of a bare bones. You can see it's just the circuit board. I cut some of the wires off that were not needed, but made it a much smaller deal than something that's going to take up an entire chunk of dash real estate. For the faceplate of it, I just took a piece of clear plastic that I had, put some electrical tape on the inside so that it looks like it's blacked out and makes it a little cleaner. For the radio, MP3 player, you can see how small this thing is. It really doesn't take up much space and it weighs next to nothing, especially compared to the old radio. I've adapted the wiring. I just bought one of the plug and play harnesses. I used to have an Alpine in here, and So I had a lot of the wirings already there, and also the bezel plate. But it takes the same bezel plate that the Alpine took, and the Alpine was 12, 13 years old. So it does not come with this plate, the adapter, but you can get that, everything else it comes with. And it's got the auxiliary port, the small SD card, USB, and I've played with it a little bit. It sounds pretty good. Good enough for me. Since I've got some extra time, I thought I would show this handy test tool that I have. It's called a Power Probe. I think this is the 4th generation. I've had it for about 10 years, and it's been very handy for troubleshooting wiring, any kind of issues. The display on it, if I can get it to show, it has multiple modes, so you can change back and forth. You can go to different test modes. You can power fuel injectors, check frequency. Feed test is for ohms. So if you were doing a resistance check, you do it through there. The one I use the most is volt DC, and what that does is it gives you 12 volts. So if you push the button, you're getting 12 volts at the tip, or you can get 0 volts. So whatever you put into the circuit, that's what you get. It also comes with a ground cable that's attached to it. So if you want to play with switches, in this case I've got the ground hooked up to the neon ground, and then I can use the power probe, if I can hold everything in place. So by touching various circuits, you can test the functions. So it works very handy. I think they're around $100, maybe more by now, but I found it invaluable over the years. One thing you want to make sure, they have different versions, and the one I have has an 18-foot cable. And it's handy because wherever your battery is, you can connect to it. So if you want to plug it in the back of the car, the front of the car, wherever it is, you'll have plenty to run all the way to the other end. It also comes with a cigarette lighter jack, so you can plug it to the inside of the car if you want it. But Power Probe, definitely worth it.